things and stuff, in which you are thou. That'll make more sense when you see that.
Trough-born son in the house. Welcome back. I am the mid-grade masochist.
Boy!
We have another one, a r/no sleep. The author is Bad Andy the Red. Thank you for creating this story, Bad Andy. Title is, I bought an old doll as a birthday gift. Now it's speaking to me and it knows the truth.
What is the truth?
Bum.
What does it know? What does it know?
I need to know what it knows.
I saw what you were doing last night and it was filthy.
Do you want me to kick this one off because you read like the last 3 hours?
Yeah. I was tricked by an old lady.
The old old Irish lady, grandma.
It was like In and Out, Mrs. Doubtfire. It's like, please, dear.
You were so burnt out with the voice, at least. I mean, you were like,
God.
It wasn't over the hill.
'Twasn't light before Christmas, son.
All right, so I'll take the meat. You want to take the potatoes? Just take any dialogue that rolls through and.
Yeah, and if it tricks us and suddenly I'm like doing a 55 fucking minute speech as a doll.
I don't know what to make of all of this. It all seems impossible. Last week I was just looking to buy a gift for my mom, and now I am reeling at the revelation that spirits could be real. Worse still, that they could be merciful, malevolent, and everything in between. I have to try to determine if the spirit I found, if indeed it is really one, is helpful or harmful. From what I have seen so far, the truth of the answer is connected to the truth itself, or rather, one's ability to perceive it. I will tell you the truth of what I found, and maybe you can help me figure out what I should do with this thing, this doll that spoke to me. I have to do something because the more I learn about its true nature, the more dangerous it seems. It began with a simple task. I was out looking for a last-minute gift for my mom's birthday. I should not have waited as long as I had, and I was running out of time. I had a very busy work schedule and did not have much time to look for something. Every time I ordered online for her gifts, I could tell she was a bit disappointed. She had every eclectic taste, and I knew she would appreciate a more thoughtful gift that I had picked out in person, rather than ordered from Amazon.
You got me a Stairmaster again.
A Stairmaster? How could you? I have 6.
Dude, I'm the worst about that last minute shit too. I'll be like, man, I'll think about it 3 weeks in advance. One time I forgot to buy my mom something for Mother's Day. And I had like $20 and I was at work. I went down to the gas station. I bought her 4
Reese's Pieces cups?
No, $4 or $5 scratch offs. I was like, you know what? She's going to win big. And then I was like, you know what though? What if I scratch one of these off, win even more, and buy her a nice gift, and I pocket some change? Next thing I know,
You didn't have any money.
I got these scratch off that are all scratched off, and I won nothing. And I had no money left.
It was a trap. To that end, I resolved to check some of the antique shops and other outlets near where she lived. It was a small town, and I was not sure what I would find. But I figured it would be better to check there and find something, rather than go to a larger store for something more generic. After striking out a few locations, I found one that looked interesting. A place called True Antique. It seemed like just the right kind of store to find something she would like. I stepped inside and was assailed by a musty smell, mixed with the faint aroma of mothballs. I wondered if it had been a while since they cleaned up, since everything seemed a bit stagnant. Antiques, I figured, are supposed to be a bit old and musty. Not out of place, I guess, and the old smell was fitting, if not a little difficult to stomach. I moved into the store and began looking around. I found a few trinkets here and there, but nothing stood out at first. Then I saw they had a selection of old-timey porcelain dolls. My mother had a collection of those since she was a child, but she lost the most of them.
She lost the most of them. They were gone in the fire.
Yeah, but she lost most of them at some point in the past and only had a handful left. I knew this was something she would like, so I grabbed one of the 2 that were on the shelf. The doll had a fine layer of dust on it. I brushed it off and examined the features. I wore a miniature Victorian era. It wore. I sometimes I get those little ones wrong that change the whole fucking story. You know what I mean? Instead of it, I say I.
I was dressed in a nice little Victorian blue dress. Be even better if this is like a big dude.
Yeah, just one word fucking changes everything. It wore a miniature Victorian-era blue dress and had light brown hair and a well-painted but almost stern-looking face. As I held the doll, I felt a strange sensation of my mind wandering. I almost fell into a fatigue-like state at the moment, like I had suddenly become so lost in thought that I might just stand there for hours before I found myself again. I broke out of my stupor and considered putting the doll back. Something about holding it made me feel strange. I looked at the other doll. It wore a frayed yellow dress and had curly red hair. Its face had an almost pained expression, along with a hairline crack that made it a bit less appealing. At that point, I had decided. My mother's favorite color was blue, so I pushed back my earlier reservation and decided to buy the one with the blue dress after all. I walked up to the front counter of the store, and the older woman with white hair and thick glasses approached me from behind the counter. She placed both hands on the counter and looked me up and down. Then she adjusted her glasses and spoke.
Ah, yes. Let's see what you have there, my friend. Oh, yes. That little one is a beauty. To be honest, it can be a bit of trouble.
She slapped her knee and laughed at the statement and chortled for a few moments longer. I had no idea what was so funny about the word honest, or how the doll could be trouble. For a moment, I was worried this lady had a name and backstory for these dolls, and I would have to sit through some history lesson I did not have time to take in. She must have seen the confusion and concern on my face, and she composed herself and continued.
Yes, well, sorry about that. Anyway, I am sure you and Matilda will hit it off. A truer friend there never was. At least if you can handle the truth. And of course, if you treat her right.
She was nodding her head at her own words as if she was not even talking to me. I was starting to get the impression the shopkeeper did not get many customers, because she seemed a bit awkward with people. She suddenly turned back to look at me, almost as if she remembered I was there and she was not talking to herself, and said flatly,
That will be $115. Would you like a bag?
I balked the price and was about to try and haggle when she read my intention and immediately spoke again.
She is a very rare and valuable antique, though I will admit she did cause some trouble for the last people who bought her. So just for you, I will let her go for $80. That is my final offer, though. I have to make ends meet after all.
She smiled again, though not at me, but at the doll on the counter. The whole encounter was feeling a bit creepy, but I figured I would take the offer discounted and get out of there.
So what have we learned so far with going to putrid shops? Doesn't smell right, you find something old, and it costs an exuberant amount for some old shit, and then suddenly they're like, you know what? Let's make it even cheaper.
Yeah, everybody likes to discount the haunted items, right? I mean,
Right.
That just seems to be like the thing that's always happening in these stories.
And they've already picked it up. They're like, I had this really weird feeling when I held it, but it is my mom's favorite color. Fuck you.
I agreed to the bag, and the shopkeeper reverently wrapped the doll up and warned me to.
Be careful. She is as fragile as some people's self-image and as free-spirited, as open as the truth.
I thanked her and left, pondering more of the strange words she had mentioned about the doll. I thought just then that I would spare my mom the weird backstory and just give her the doll for her collection. If they were supposed to have some personality, I could always direct her to the store so she could talk over the doll's backstory with the odd shopkeeper there. I made it back home and spent a bit of time getting some housework done. It was getting late, and at that point, I was getting ready to turn in for the night. I was going to wrap the doll in a nicer box or bag, but I did not have the energy just then, so I decided to get some sleep. I looked at my phone and saw it was almost dead. I also saw I had a notification that the new phone charger I had ordered arrived. Before going to bed, I checked my porch for the package that was supposed to have been delivered from Amazon. I saw it was missing and cursed out loud inside. This kept happening. I swore whoever was stealing my packages was going to get what was coming to them. I went back inside and heard an odd sound. It almost sounded like singing. It was coming from the room where I had placed the doll. But when I walked in to check, there was no sound at all. I stood there in silence, questioning my mental state. As I waited, I heard another sound, almost like somebody whispering something. I could not quite make it out, but it sounded like somebody trying to say something, just very faintly or very far away. I looked around, trying to see if I could find the source of the old whispers. Then I realized the most likely scenario was the most obvious, but it must be the doll. The doll must have had a voice box or something. I did not think porcelain dolls could speak, but it would not be impossible to hook one up to a voice box so they could. I pulled the doll out of the bag and looked it over once again. I was not certain, but it almost seemed like the expression had softened and it had the hint of a smile on its face, where before it had looked moody and slightly upset. I brushed off what was likely me just not remembering how its face really looked earlier and tried to inspect the thing for a string, button, or some device that could be linked to an audio box. I looked around for a few minutes with no luck, then I tried something I did not expect would work, but gave it a shot all the same. I said out loud,
Hello?
There was a long pause, just long enough for me to feel silly for trying to talk to the thing. I was about to put it back when I was shocked and completely freaked out when a voice did respond.
Hello, my name is Matilda. Nice to meet you.
The response itself was not what had bothered me. What made me concerned and uneasy was the response had not come from an audio box in the doll. The response seemed to come from no obvious source at all. In fact, it seemed like it had just popped into my own mind, like a thought that had been willed into my own brain from another entity entirely. Okay, so this just hit paranormal state. There's two options. There's paranormal or there's psychosis, one or the other. And I'm leaning more towards paranormal because they did feel the strange feeling whenever they picked the doll up for the first time. And now it's telepathy. The intrusive thought/greeting almost made me jump in surprise and drop the doll. I tried to compose myself and investigate the phenomenon further. I summoned the conviction to return the greeting to the small figure.
Hello, Matilda.
There was another short pause, and then, again, a response seemed to come into my mind without any real audio cue in the quiet room.
Will you be my friend?
I was stunned by the telepathic discourse I was having with a tiny doll. I considered I might be hallucinating, but I had no idea what could be causing these types of vivid and intrusive voices if I was. I also felt uneasy at the fact that the voice was in my head and yet was clearly not my own mind. I spent so long contemplating my own sanity that suddenly I looked back at the doll and its painted face had shifted again. Now there was a look of profound sadness on it, and I realized I had not answered its question. I figured it would play along and told the odd thing.
Yes, of course I will be your friend.
The answer was almost immediate that time, and I heard the voice practically shout back into my head.
Great!
So,
Great!
if I'm going to these insane voices, you would think that they'd be like, wow, this sounds ridiculously evil, but you're talking to a doll.
Yeah, first off, you've already lost your mind if you're hearing this doll talk to you in your head.
Right, let's make it sound like Danny Filth or something.
Yeah.
Great! That's so great. Thank you. I promise I will be a true friend to you. If you are always true to me, I can see many things, but I will not look into you, only speak to you, because you are my friend and I trust you.
The doll had some interesting perspectives, and I had to learn more while the psychic conversation was still going on. I was so fascinated that I resolved to keep talking, at least until I hopefully woke up from this bizarre dream I must be having. I asked the most pertinent questions first.
I'm sorry I'm so direct, Matilda, but what are you? Are you a spirit, a demon, or some other thing that could inhabit the body you currently possess?
There was another long pause, and I wondered if she was thinking about how to respond. I started to worry since I had seen too many scary stories of haunted dolls. Did not believe strongly in the supernatural, but it would just be my luck to find a doll possessed by some soul-devouring demon. She had finally come up with her answer and replied.
I am me, just Matilda, I think. I do not know what I am besides a doll. I think I have always been this way. I remember having a sister and she was a doll as well. I also remember someone else, but it's blurry. My memory about myself is not the best. I remember it is my job to see things in others, to see the truth and help my friends.
I felt a bit better at the benign response. Not overly evil behavior to fret over. I chuckled to myself at the absurdity and possibility of the situation. But I might just have found one more run-of-the-mill psychic porcelain doll. The insane conversation was cut short when I heard loud music start from next door, and I groaned out loud as the crazy situation was affected by more mundane annoyance. My neighbor was at it again. Every Sunday he had people over and played music so loud and so late, it kept me from getting sleep till well after midnight. I had worked an early shift Monday morning, and no matter how many times I told him to try to keep it down, he'd just keep at it. He would pretend to listen to placate me, or just ignore me completely. I called the cops one time it was particularly bad, and he has been more hostile to me ever since then. I sighed and was not sure what I would do this time. I had to get up even earlier than normal since I had to get the flowers for my mom's birthday tomorrow. My frustration was interrupted by a soft voice gently prodding into my annoyed mind again.
What's wrong, my friend? You seem upset.
I was surprised and then remembered I'd been talking to a sentient doll again. I figured I had asked my questions of her, so I may as well share my frustrations with her as well. Why not? Since now, she was apparently a friend.
It's my neighbor. I have to get up early tomorrow, and he is always inconsiderate on Sundays with the noise. He has his parties over there with extremely loud music till well after midnight. I'm just tired and I need to get some sleep.
Matilda replied with a request.
Would you bring me over there? Maybe I can help.
I almost laughed out loud at the prospect of bringing the psychic talking doll I had bought as a gift for my mom's birthday over to my neighbor's house to tell him to keep it down so I could get some sleep. I see something starting to form here. Do you see what I see? Do you see what I see? It could go a couple different ways.
I don't know why they would laugh about anything. Like they're just very quickly just like, oh, I'm talking to this doll. It's talking to me.
Oh, I accepted the fact that I'm talking to a doll like immediately there couldn't be more than
I feel like if I'm on that level of talking to a doll, I'm going to be like, can you fuck him up? Do you have winning lottery numbers?
I think the doll is going to kind of take care of his problem for him.
I sure hope so.
Is this a female lead role or male lead role? I thought it was male.
Don't know.
It doesn't say.
Doesn't matter, I guess. I'm just kind of trying to do a neutral voice there.
My dismissive tone was noticeable, and I swear I saw her look sad again. I decided if I was already in a crazy dream, what could it hurt to indulge the curious new friend of mine? I walked over towards my neighbor's house, still in my robe and sweatpants, holding the doll in one arm against my chest with her face pointing out, like a ventriloquist that had just rolled out of bed.
Let's fucking go.
Before we made it to the door, Matilda spoke into my mind again.
This is close enough, thank you. Please wait a moment.
I stood there on my neighbor's lawn, confused and still holding the doll, which was physically there, but somehow felt absent at the moment. I was embarrassed and hoped nobody would open a window just then and see me standing there looking like a lunatic. Yeah.
Just stand there in a robe.
It's not the place you want to get caught. This is not the point where you want to get caught. The music had stopped and I was afraid it was because they knew someone was outside, but I heard nothing indoors at first. Then, after a moment, I heard shouting and there was some sort of argument going on indoors. I was about to get closer to check when I heard the familiar voice speaking into my mind again.
Your neighbor is a liar. I don't like liars. So many secrets, deceptions, lies. I looked and I saw things. He kept the relationship with another woman hidden from his girlfriend. She knows now. She is not happy. She will leave soon and he will either follow her or sulk. He will not feel like partying for the rest of the night. My friend should have some peace and quiet for the remainder of the night.
I was astounded by the doll's declaration. I could not believe it, but when I inched closer to the window, I heard shouts and screams of an obvious argument between my neighbor and his girlfriend.
She's just a work friend. It's not what you think. Come on, Cindy. Really? You're just gonna leave over a misunderstanding?
A loud slap was heard after his appeal and an icy response of,
Fuck you, Glenn!
Then the front door swung open and I fell back and toward the side of the house to not be seen standing there and listening in on the exchange. After a movement of sitting there in the grass by the window, I was unsure if I should stand up and leave, or stay a moment longer. Then I heard more coming from inside. I heard objects breaking and yells of anger, followed promptly by sobbing as my neighbor Glenn went through the entire emotional range of getting dumped. Though I admitted it had sounded like he deserved it. Then I considered my situation. I had to ask the immediate follow-up question to my companion and look down at the doll I was still holding. Matilda's painted face now wore a wicked smile, and she was clearly proud of what she had done. I had no idea just how she had done it. I asked her directly.
What was that? What did you do exactly?
She replied instantly.
I told her the truth. Glenn is a bad man. He lies a lot. He is also a thief. In his garage there are 3 boxes. All of them are deliveries that were dropped off at my friend's house. He stole them from you. You should get them back.
I was speechless. I could not believe the doll had done so much and could see and manipulate so much around her. I was fumbling for a response when I heard the garage door open and saw my neighbor's car exit the garage. Matilda was right. He was going after his now ex-girlfriend. When the car left, I had an idea and I raced to the side of the garage after he had driven off. I snuck under the door before it closed. I had to know for sure. Matilda was right. 3 Amazon boxes lay in a corner, all addressed to me. I did not know why he had taken them, maybe just to spite me for calling the cops on him that one time. Whatever the case, I had no idea that she had known about that. Could this doll read and influence people's minds as we talked to them? Whatever the case, I was dumbfounded and just managed to mumble a response of,
Thanks. Thank you, Matilda.
I looked down at the doll and her eyes were closed and a large grin on her face. Her voice came back into my mind with an acknowledgement of,
Anything for my friend. Also, if you would like, I could do more. Now that I have looked inside, I can reach him. Based on his current emotional state and the doubts he has about his life goals and aspirations, there is a good likelihood that I could influence him to crash his car in a fatal manner and remove him as a nuisance completely. Would that make you happy, my friend?
My jaw hung open. This doll's psychotic.
I like it.
Yeah, no, I'm digging it. Hey, you're my friend now. I'll do whatever you need. No questions asked.
You better not piss her off, though. Don't lie to her.
You want a QP of that yay? I mean, hey.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? That doll's going to go and deliver.
There are 2 kilos of cocaine in your father's garage.
Drop the cocaine on you. My jaw hung open and my heart sank as I processed what I had just heard. I looked down at the doll with dawning horror at the brutal suggestion it had just directed into my mind. The wide smile never left its face, and I remembered the quote-unquote trouble that the shopkeeper had mentioned with the doll's previous owners. I had no idea what I had gotten myself into. I tried to calm my mind and not let the horror of an implication of Matilda's suggestion color my response. I did not know what she was capable of just then, but I feared if I disappointed her, she would turn her power on me just then. I told her flatly,
No, that will not be necessary. I got my boxes back and it's quiet. Thank you again, Matilda. I think I need to have a drink and lay down for a bit. Hopefully, I will not wake up in a room with padded walls and find out I'm as crazy as this night seems to indicate.
I walked back to my house and went inside, retiring for the night with my new friend. That's part 1 there.
You know what? In a sense, it felt slightly rushed that all of a sudden it's just like, hey, I'm talking to a doll. But I mean, who needs the fluff?
Right. And then if they spent like 5 or 6 paragraphs on why that was happening, it probably would burn you out. And then you really wouldn't care about the rest of it. In the beginning, I was like, man, that went like 0 to 100 immediately. But now that the first part's over, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad that they kind of skipped over all that junk. But
It was like a little intro.
no, it was really, really cool. Definitely hooked. Like, this doll's not done doing stuff. This is going to escalate
Like, you got to be careful because if the doll can look inside you, she said initially she's not going to look inside her because she's her friend, but that doesn't mean that she won't. And if she sees that doubt, or at this point, like, you got to be having really good thoughts about this doll, because if it looks inside you and it knows that you want to like stick it in a garbage disposal or some shit, it ain't going to be good. Part 2 of I bought an old doll as a birthday gift and now it's speaking to me and I knows the truth.
You just like open the door of your neighbor's house and throw the doll in like against the wall and then close the door and it's like, hi, I want to be your friend. Just like dismantles him right there on the spot.
It's like a doll grenade. Dolotov cocktail. I went back inside my own house and put Matilda on the table in the dining room and started towards my bedroom. I heard the voice in the back of my head. It sounded distant. Then I heard a soft voice that seemed sad and a little embarrassed. It asked,
Did I do something wrong? You look concerned. Are you afraid of me?
I was shocked, but also not surprised by the question. I remembered I had sworn to be honest, so I had to tell her.
Yes, I'm a little afraid right now. I'm sorry. I was just not expecting all the things you can apparently do. I just need a moment.
There was a pause, and then an acknowledgement.
Oh, all right. Well, sleep, my friend. I will speak to you tomorrow.
The voice faded away, and it seemed she had returned to her dormant state. She sat silently on the table I had set her on, and after a minute of waiting, I heard no more attempts at communication. I walked back to my room and shut the door and sat on my bed trying to process the insanity of the day. I could not believe the situation I had found myself in, but I knew one thing. I could not give her away right now. I had no idea how she might react if I tried to give her to my mom. Worse, I did not know if it would be safe to do so. When I was finally able to quiet my mind, I eventually fell asleep. I remember having vivid dreams of being small and sitting on a giant shelf with giant people walking around. I could hear them speak, but I could also hear them think. The din of voices increased and threatened to drive me mad before I finally managed to shut them out by some force of will. I thought as well about her. I did not know who she was, but a word kept cropping up in my jumbled thoughts as I tossed and turned. Ruby. Who was Ruby? I woke up to my alarm blaring. I was exhausted and felt like I had hardly gotten any rest. I shot upright as I realized I had to try and find a replacement gift for my mom today. I was not going to give her Matilda, but that meant I had to find something else before I met her in the morning for breakfast. I got ready and raced to the door. I did not even know what would be open this early, but I had to find something thoughtful in less than an hour. As I was leaving, I felt something tugging at my mind, and I realized Matilda was trying to get my attention. Apparently she wanted to go. Even though I was not giving her as a gift, I told her,
I don't think it's a good idea. I'm going to see my mom and she might get freaked out by your abilities.
There was a considerable pause and her voice gently prodded into my mind.
I promise I won't speak to her. You can even keep me in a backpack or something if you're embarrassed. I just don't want to be left alone on a shelf anymore. I would like to go to where my friends go and be ready to help if they need help.
I felt bad for her and relented under the condition that she stay in the backpack. I left and went back downtown to the small run of thrift shops to try and find a last-minute replacement gift. I was lucky and found success on the first store I had tried. I managed to find a pretty music box from a store I had not visited yesterday. Things were looking up and I rushed back to my car to head to my mom's house. I was stuck at a crosswalk waiting to get out to the other side where I had parked. The light changed to walk and I hurried across and heard a blaring car horn and the squeal of brakes as a bright red sports car stopped just inches before hitting me. The driver was yelling at me and had been trying to turn despite the crosswalk signaling that pedestrians were clear to walk. I thought I heard an angry rant of, "Hurry up and cross, you piece of shit!" I was confused by the upfront hostility of the man and angrily responded by showing him a particular finger and shouted back,
Learn how to read, asshole. It says walk.
To my surprise, he actually gunned the car and drove past me instead of waiting for me to finish crossing and actually clipped me as he sped off. I was speechless at the overt hostility and brushed myself off and hurried back to my own vehicle, shaken by the experience. I sat back down in my car and tried to lower my speeding heart rate. A small voice crept in the back of my mind again.
Are you all right?
I felt better for the first time hearing the reassuring voice. The weirdness of talking to the doll was wearing off, and I replied to Matilda.
I'm okay. That was just a little too close.
I did not open my backpack to look, but I could imagine that her face wore a concerned expression, and she replied,
I'm so sorry that happened. Some people are just terrible. They only care about themselves. The world would be better off without those sorts of people.
I felt better at her attempt to sympathize with me, and I made the mistake of answering her just then.
Yeah, you're right. We would all be better off without reckless jerks like that in the world.
I started my car and drove off, not even noticing the presence of the doll was absent for a while afterwards, and never realizing that Matilda was up to something. I arrived at my mom's house, and she greeted me warmly and went inside. I wished her a happy birthday, and I gave her the music box I had purchased as a replacement for Matilda. She seemed to really like it, and I could tell I lucked out with the last-minute find. As we spoke, I asked her how she was doing, and she responded with the normal.
Oh, me? Don't worry about me. I'm doing just fine.
I asked if she was having anyone else over today, and she hesitated briefly and then said,
No, just you today. Having a low-key birthday this year. Don't worry about me, sweetie.
I did not think anything of the answer at first. Then a familiar voice gently pushed into my mind.
Your mother's lying. She is afraid to tell you that she is still seeing one named Michael.
At first, I tried to push Matilda's voice away. I did not want her reading my mother's thoughts. Then I tensed up when I heard the name Michael. I couldn't believe she was still seeing him. Oh shit, dude.
Yeah, this is a different level. And this is what I was talking about, just like little slices at a time before the climax. Like that's what makes a good story. It's not like, okay, you know that the doll can at least ruin relationships, but now the doll is telling her mother's like confided secrets.
Yeah, and that's the truth, right? That's the truth that she can see. So maybe like the doll doesn't pick up knives and check.
No, it ruins situations with the truth.
Michael was the first person my mother dated after she separated with my dad. He was an airline pilot when they met, retired now, but in reality, his full-time job was a cheating scumbag. He was one of those good old boys who thought he could have a different woman in every major city due to the nature of his job. Worse still, despite having a decent job, he was awful with money, and my mom blew a ton of her own savings on him when they were together. My heart sank when I considered they might be together again. Despite her infatuation, the man was probably trying to sink his hooks into her again because he was blowing his retirement as bad as he was blowing his money when he was working. I knew that a heartbreak was in the near future if this was really happening. Yet, I had no idea how to broker the subject considering I had learned this all from a psychic doll in my backpack. My mom noticed the silence after she spoke and she was getting self-conscious about it. Maybe even suspecting I somehow knew what she was saying was a lie. She promptly offered me a cup of tea and stood up and walked out of the living room we were sitting in. I was not sure what to do, but then I realized I had not responded to Matilda and she spoke into my mind again.
She should not lie to my friend. She acts self-righteous, but she does as much lying as he did, as both of them did. She feels like she can't judge because she cheated on him, on your father.
My jaw almost hit the floor, and I was stunned by another, even more significant revelation about my mom, and I was feeling increasingly uncomfortable. I knew that my parents had broken up, but I did not know that my mom had cheated on my dad with someone else. I honestly did not want to know that. I reached out with my mind and spoke to Matilda again.
Please, don't read my mom's mind. I know you want to help, but it's making me uncomfortable.
There was a moment of silence, and then a soft response of,
I'm sorry it's making you sad, my friend. I only want to help. If your mother's lies are making you uncomfortable, I can take care of her. That way, she will not be able to lie to you anymore.
oh man.
First off, what's going on? Cuz like this doll is about to start karate chopping shit. Like
You told a lie. It's time to sever their veins.
You know what rhymes with lie? Time to die.
like I could just see that like.
I'm glad you're doing the doll voice now. I was reverting back to like an Irish old lady.
I'm thinking like female version of Chucky.
I'm sorry.
Howdy ho, buddy. Want to play?
My blood turned to ice in my veins as I realized the threat she had just made out to my own mother. just for lying about a relationship status. I fumbled for a response that struck the right tone, but the response I managed to think of was more forceful than I first intended.
No, absolutely not. Why would you even think that?
I immediately felt guilty, but also scared of the response to the mental retort that I had just assaulted her with. I had no idea if she might feel anger at me and try to get into my head as retribution. There was a painfully long pause, and I was about to say something else when a meek and sad response came into my mind.
I was just trying to help, my friend. I do not like it when people lie, but especially not to my friends. I'm sorry.
Despite her threat a moment ago, I was surprised when I found myself feeling bad for Matilda and guilty that I had just lashed out at her. Once again, I considered my situation and could not believe I was silently arguing with a porcelain doll. The rest of the visit with my mom was nice, but a bit awkward. I did not bring up Michael or my dad, and I left a bit early. My mom looked relieved, and I figured based on the lie from earlier that Michael would be coming over sometime later that day. I said goodbye and got on the road back home. As I was considering what to do about the entire situation, I almost rear-ended the car in front of me. I had to slam on my brakes as I had run into a rather unusual amount of traffic congestion on the way back home. It was not normally a busy road, so I was surprised there would be traffic. Unless there was construction or something slowing things down, this is very strange. Eventually, I had inched far enough into the single lane of moving traffic to see what had happened. What I saw, I could barely believe. It's gonna be that dude.
Bum,
The
bum,
Clipper.
bum.
It was the red car that had almost hit me from earlier that day. It was blocking the right lane of traffic and was flipped over on its top. Apparently, it was some sort of accident. Considering the driver, I was not surprised with how reckless he seemed. Yet I saw something else more horrifying. The driver was not in the car. There was a ton of police nearby, and I saw what looked like a crime scene set up in the area. Then I saw what looked like a body bag, and I knew the likely fate of that man. The whole scene was disturbing. The guy was an asshole, but to die like that was brutal. Then I heard on the news later that evening that it was even worse than I thought. Apparently the man had randomly assaulted responding officers after flipping his car, and he was shot to death as a result.
Damn. Damn, they're like, it's coming right for us. Yeah, you ain't helping me. Pa, 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 pa. And he's done.
Holy shit. The dude flipped his car and was a dick to the officers, and they just unloaded on him.
Well, this is probably the doll getting into his mind or something. Guaranteed.
Witnesses at the scene had said that he was raving about the officers knowing the truth about him. They also said that the man had attacked them in order to get them to shoot, saying, "We would all be better off without reckless jerks like me in the world."
Okay. That's good. That's really, really good. I like the twist. It's a good twist.
We would all be better off without me. As I read the man's last words, my heart sank and I froze in fear. I thought about what I had said to Matilda, and I looked over to her sitting on the counter and smiling playfully back at me. My mind was racing and I was overwhelmed with anxiety. When I was heading to my room to go to sleep, I finally mustered the will to ask her.
Matilda, I need you to tell me something. What did you do earlier today?
There was a small pause, and I heard what sounded like a tittering laugh, followed by the response of,
What I always do. I just showed someone the truth. In this case, the truth was just what my friend had said. We would be better off without reckless jerks like that in the world. Good night, my friend. Have a good sleep.
I pushed back the feeling of apprehension and fear long enough to mutter back a meek,
Good night, Matilda.
Then their presence left the room, and I felt a deep feeling of dread at what would happen next if someone else was caught telling lies. I had to think of something to do about my new friend.
Wow. I'm legitimately in this story.
Definitely.
Yeah, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul somewhere, too. Like, this is at the expense of what?
You know what was weird, and I didn't interject earlier when we were talking about it, part of the story, but she had that dream where, like, she was a doll.
Oh, I see where you're going with that.
Like, she was sitting on the shelf and saw these giant people. She didn't really, like, elaborate on that. Or
Yeah,
they didn't.
that's just like Child's Play. Maybe it's trying to take over her body.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe the goal there is to switch places.
I appreciate all of you hanging around for the story. I appreciate Troughtborn Sun being here with the Midgrid Masochist.
Thanks for having me, dude. I'm stoked to see what Matilda fucks up next.
100%. I'm in. Until next time, please like, subscribe. It helps me out. I'm the Midgrid Masochist. Farewell.